Well, the North Node is once again to be studied today, insofar as it's it's stationary at the 21st degree Taurus. And we've looked at that a few weeks ago. This is the finger pointing in the open book. I'll read it again. It's to do with careful discrimination of wisdom, the balance between receiving guidance and self-determination of wisdom. Seeking guidance, it is sometimes helpful to use the oracular function of sacred texts by opening such a book at random, for example, and intuitively discovering personal meaning in a line. Taken too far, this can create an overdependence and diminish self-reliance, so that personal will and freedom of choice are inappropriately sacrificed. So, we've looked at this before and we're looking again now, and the emphasis is today, because the North Node is stationary on this point, so that it's really underlining the wisdom. And that wisdom is basically, be a bit careful about what you take on as received wisdom. It's very popular activity for us to look into the oracular function through tarot cards, through astrology and so on. And yet this isn't always reliable. That's the point here. And we've got the South Node stationary also at Scorpio 21, a soldier, derelict in his duty, conscientious objection, being true to ourselves. So that's the fundamental thing here. It's not permissible to surrender your authority to another just because they're claiming the ability to read the signs better than you can. Sometimes it's legitimate to ask, to consult, and so on. Of course, that's true. But it is not permissible to surrender your authority. Now, this 21st degree of Taurus lies within that expression. Within the last three expressions of Taurus, we have awakening, the 16th to the 20th degrees. And here we have authority, the 21st to the 25th degrees. And then finally, depth. So the second part of Taurus is about awakening to a new level of being, a new awareness of the nature of reality. That's what awakening is about. And we go through 5 degrees of Taurus to help us with that. And here we come to authority. Authority kind of means that we write our own story. The author of a book writes the book. Authority is about writing our own story and not taking somebody else's sense of reality as more important than ours. So a very delicate point arises here between the sense of how much do we take guidance and how much do we trust our own authority. It is entirely appropriate to take guidance. It is appropriate, if you actually ask for a consultation, to trust the guidance that you're given, as long as it feels right. That's the difference, isn't it? If it doesn't feel right, then it's wrong. We can't simply trust people's word willy-nilly, partly because they've got their own personal agenda, and it won't be ours, it's theirs. Partly because they can make mistakes. Partly because it's the time now for us to make a claim, to step into our own personal authority. And this is no small thing. This has been a big feature of our lives since the first breath. We were subject to somebody else's authority immediately we were born. And that is not routinely changed. We don't get given authority when we're 18 or 21 or anything else. Never. The only time when we can shift from being baby-like in accepting ourselves as being powerless, and to change that, it takes a claim we have to make a claim to assert our authority, or we will never have authority. You cannot be given authority. If somebody says, you may do that in my name, then they have the authority still. You cannot delegate responsibility, you see, and so they hold on to that sense of power. Now, they is the big they, the people, the institutions, the influences that you have allowed yourself to be subject to. And at the beginning you had no choice because you were a baby. So the issue is when, indeed whether, you're going to make this claim of authority. And in this particular case, we're saying, well, it begins with understanding. It begins on the level of mind. The finger in the open book, Taurus 21, is reading the wisdom of the ancients, perhaps. Somebody wise who's been trusted over the centuries has written this. And you can read this and you can actually think, okay, well, a man wiser than I wrote that. A woman whose intuition is has more depth than mine wrote that. So maybe I should trust it. And yeah, maybe you should. But the point is, maybe you shouldn't. That's the point here. Maybe you shouldn't. Make up your mind whether to or not. So this is what the North Node is doing in 21st Taurus. And I'm speaking of it in depth again because soon, coming up around the 1st of August, there is a triple conjunction of the North Node with Uranus. Think about that. And Mars at the same time. This is quite a big deal. So I think it's good for us to start thinking ahead and feeling what's going on in our lives to do with the North Node. Now, the North Node is quite a lot to do with realignment of your life direction with a spiritual focus. It's called the North Pole in Sufism. We align to the North Pole, which means our spiritual polarity, the pole star of our spiritual motivation. And the North Node helps us to do that. And we're saying here is an opportunity for us to take a greater authority in that, not just to follow what has gone before, but to take our own authority. And it will be conjuncting Uranus soon. It will be going back then from the expression of authority into the expression of awakening. Uranus is in the expression of awakening. Extraordinarily strong symbol of awakening. Uranus is the awakener. And with the North Node conjunct Uranus, you may expect to awaken to a new dimension of spiritual consciousness. And at that exact same time, Mars is conjunct both of them simultaneously. Really unusual, a threefold exact conjunction in the Sabian symbol. So Mars is going to energize that. We'll talk about that when the time comes, but we're preparing for that. It's not long now. And so be aware of Uranus energy, awakening energy, new things, surprising things, very quick. And you have to grasp it quickly. Opportunity unfolds very, very quickly with Uranus, and you grasp it, and it is of the highest spiritual importance because of the North Node being there. They're not exactly in conjunction yet, but they're in conjunction already, of course, with an orb. So this time we're all awakening into a greater sense of what is our spiritual purpose. And not only that, but the opportunity to act upon it is given us, because Mars is there. We can move on this. There's a very big difference between having the idea of what our spirituality will look like now that we're different, now that we're more awake, on the one hand, and on the other hand, putting Mars into the equation, Mars conjunct Uranus. Now, if you handle that well, that's like an exciting burst of tremendous energy. if it's aligned properly. And in this case, properly means spiritually, because it's the North Node. Now, if it isn't aligned properly, then Mars-Uranus is going to take you in the wrong direction, and somewhat dangerously so. So, back to the point in hand. A deserter, a soldier derelict from his duty, deserting because he's awakened in a new level of consciousness. That's the South Node, stationary today. Leads us to understand a discriminating wisdom, a finger in an open book. We're looking at it we're not just reading it, we're putting the finger there saying, I don't know about that. Let me think about that. I want to discriminate here. That's the North Node. That's the nodal axis. Change your mind if it doesn't feel right. And with all of this stuff, it's too much for the mind. What has been written to express spiritual principles has been written by highly intelligent people over many, many years. We're not going to understand it all. So we have to trust our feelings about what works for us, what doesn't work, what's right, what's wrong for us. And we have to balance our rational intelligence with our feelings about what makes sense to the physical body. And go against the flow if the flow feels wrong. Go against received wisdom if that just doesn't check out for you. You have to get that right now, because the time is coming very soon where you're going to have to act upon this.